I just got really involved in this whole idea of reclaiming the border narrative, not only for the idea that the narrative has been hijacked, but also for myself because I grew up on the border. And we were always taught, don't go across the border. It's dangerous over there.
Welcome to the podcast Camina, conversations about migration in northern Arizona. I'm one of your hosts, Stephanie Voss, and I'm here today with Susan Cooper, who's going to tell us a little bit about today's episode. Ready, Susan?
Absolutely. Well, today, our listeners are going to get a chance to hear my interview with Damian Figueroa, and you heard just a little excerpt from that interview. He is an accomplished film producer and documentarian. Most of his work is centered around social justice, specifically around the immigrant experience, which is what Camina is all about. Some of his films that he's done are Food Chains, which was a film about a hunger strike by immigrants in Florida. His most current work, The Samaritans, is a documentary about the humanitarian work being done at the border, as well as focusing on the immigrant story.
I'm really looking forward to hearing what Damian has to say. I know that he started as a music publicist, which is kind of interesting, and worked on the careers of people like Mark Anthony and Tito Puente. And he has also served as the Vice President of Communications and Development for the Mexican American Legal and Defense Fund, or MALDEF.
So here we go. Let's take a listen. Hi, I'm Susan Cooper.
Right.
And the reason why this is a very special interview for me is what we really are trying to do is tell the immigrant story. And David has spent much of his life working on this. So we're going to go through and talk a little bit about his journey and his work as well. So welcome.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. It's good to be here in Prescott, Arizona. It's beautiful here. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you. All right. So I know a lot of your work started off, you've been doing this for years, but in your younger years, you did a lot of farm work, correct?
Yeah.
And I want to hear a little bit about that and how it influenced how you ended up here today.
Sure. My great grandparents, my grandparents on both sides, my maternal grandparents and paternal, and my mother, they were all farm workers.
Mm-hmm.
So naturally, when I was born in like 62 here in Phoenix, we lived in an area called Buckeye, Arizona, which is very different than it is today. It had a main street and little stores, and it looked like, we used to call it like Mayberry RFD. I'm dating myself, but those of us who are around that age remember that show. I grew up from 8 to 18 working in the fields. We worked the citrus in Yuma. We worked the cotton in Buckeye and the Arcahila Valley, Arlington area, and through Phoenix and also Tucson in the Marana area, and then up to Wilcox. And we would do that in the summers, but the main focus was usually around the Buckeye cotton area, cotton fields. And we wouldn't pick the cotton because obviously the gin machinery had been developed, and it had been in use for many, many, years, if not decades. And what we would do is hoe the weeds along the plants so they wouldn't be obtrusive to their growth, right? So that's what we did. And we worked in the summers and during, summer vacation. And it was not easy. But I think, a lot of the work that I do now today, the social justice work, I think the ethics and the way I work as a, in the professional setting, I'm like semi-retired now, but I think all things that I do, I attribute it to the discipline to start and to finish projects. And that was very much the example that we were given by my mom, that we had to finish the rows, we had to finish a certain field and that type of thing. So that concept of finishing and having endurance and persistence in spite of obstacles is something that's very, very important to me.
Tell me a little bit more in depth about the discipline. I mean, what are some examples that you can think of besides finishing the row that you recall?
Well, my mom was very big on house chores. She was I mean, we were, taught that, were poor, but we were clean. So my mom always made sure she used to always tell us that, my brothers and I, that we needed to be able to cook, we needed to learn how to sew, we needed to learn how to iron, wash clothes, work on the yard, change a tire on a car, all of the things that we needed that you would need to survive. We didn't have our father in the household, so she felt that it wasn't just women's work. So I really, that my mother gave me a really deep appreciation for women. Um, everything that I learned from women, starting with my mother. So I have a deep, deep appreciation, understanding, I would say, of how women teach. And I'm a staunch believer that women are the best teachers. I really believe that, and I've learned so much from them. Yeah.
Thank you. Um, as far as challenges to growing up, I take it you had to move quite a bit.
We did.
And how do you think that has influenced you as well?
Well, at the time, we were, when poverty is something that, it would start out that we would pick sometimes the fruit and vegetables that we were harvesting. But when we went to the grocery store, our grocery store was very different because we were mainly shopping at at a store that was in the middle of nowhere, which had a lot of unhealthy foods. But at the time, it was, who's counting, right? Who's paying attention to that? And so there was a big difference when we went to like a main grocery store, like in Tucson or in Phoenix. We couldn't afford a lot of the fruits and vegetables that we would be harvesting. So it was tough, and we sometimes were living in ranch housing, which was very minimal and without heat and water and that kind of stuff. So and sometimes we lived in the car. Sometimes we lived in motels and that type of thing for a day. And my mom just tried the best that she could. And so it was tough being in school and trying to concentrate, knowing that all of these things weighed heavy. And our life was very, very different from the people that, had regular homes, that, fathers and a grandmother in the neighborhood. So it just, I think I have a deep appreciation for all that we went through as children, because what that allowed me to do is adapt to work situations and environments and work in communities where you know no one and you want to help build a community. And those skills that we learn in having to make friends quick and having to build trust quick and having to prove your character through actions were instilled in us because we had to, adapt to our environment. So it comes easy for me now. And so I really draw from that as well.
Well, there comes a point in your life where you decide you're going to move on and you end up in entertainment as a publicist. How does the transition? I mean, that's not a typical career path. I'm working in the fields and now I'm going to be working in the entertainment publicist.
Well,
how did that transition take place?
Again, it starts from the fields. My mom was a fantastic singer. She was just an amazing singer. I mean, my mom was beautiful. Everybody thinks their mom was beautiful. I look at my mom objectively now, as when she was a younger woman, and she was beautiful. And if she looked like a star, and she could sing. I mean, she could really, really sing, sound like a professional. And she taught me. I couldn't speak Spanish, but I learned all of the songs that she loved phonetically. She would teach me the melody, and then she would sing the harmony. And so I learned to sing, and I became really good because of my mother. So when I went to high school, in Yuma High School, there was a class that was very much like this TV show you see on called Glee. It's
Okay.
remember this TV
Yeah,
show?
I remember Glee.
Of all places, Yuma, Arizona, Yuma High School, home of the criminals. had a class that was just like that, that had choreography, top 40 songs. Everybody could sing. Everybody was just super talented. I auditioned for that group and I became a part of that. And so I put 3 years in and we traveled different places, and that built a lot of confidence in a very shy person. Um, I didn't like school because it was always very difficult for me, but that kept me in and I graduated. And then in high school, there was a group called Up With People, and Up With People was based out of Tucson. And unbeknownst to me, they would come and recruit out of our class. And they came in, I was doing a lot of volunteer work. So Up With People was looking for people that were doing things in the community, giving back to the community, and that could sing and could dance. So they wanted the whole thing. Singing or just dancing or being a musician wasn't enough, because you have to last a year and a half in this group and travel all over the, different continents. And so I learned how to sing. And then when I finished that tour in Europe and throughout the United States, I came back to Tucson. There was a Tejano band. I knew all of those songs that my mom taught me in the fields. Now I'm performing them at dances all over the place, and making a living doing it while I'm going to school. So I really wanted to go to Hollywood because my uncle told me that you need to go to Hollywood. You're wasting your time here. So I went and auditioned for that show called Star Search, and I made it. And I went all the way to the grand finals. And this was the international Star Search, which had a larger audience. And I went to the grand finals, and then I lost. Through those connections there, I met one of the other acts that got signed to Michael Douglas's record company, which was called Third Stone Atlantic. And they were looking for publicists that could work in the Latino market, specifically in the Spanish language market. Again, I don't speak Spanish, but this is where I started to learn to speak Spanish. And, Michael and Dick Rudolph, they gave me my first break, and I was working out of their offices, very young age. And pretty soon I was independent and started to work with a lot of different acts, like a singer named Jose, this Johnny Canales, Celia Cruz, Tito Puente, La India, and Boys to Men and their Spanish language album, and on and on. So that's my entertainment story in short, or in long.
Okay, so you were working in the industry, but you always kept your hand involved in social work and philanthropic work. Again, what motivated that? Because it'd be very easy to get distracted.
When you're working with entertainers, there's always nonprofits that do these galas, that they do social justice campaigns. They like to use celebrities, and I'm one of the people that they could go to, especially the Latino nonprofits. And I would deliver, the celebrities to them. And so there was a woman, her name is Antonia Hernandez, the same name as my mother. And she was the president and general counsel of the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund. It's called MALDEF. And she asked me to come join her, and she allowed me to, continue my work in entertainment and in civil rights. And they taught me the ropes there about how laws were changed, about the Constitution, basic human rights. And so I was now in charge of doing the communications for a lot of these lawsuits. So I'd have to read the complaint and then interpret that so that people out in the public could grasp this legal mumbo jumbo. And so the attorneys there were very, very helpful. And so at the same time, I was doing these big galas that would raise money in Washington, D.C., and Chicago, and different cities, Los Angeles, San Antonio, and where we would receive keynote speakers like Caroline Kennedy, President Vicente Fox, Al Gore, and working with entertainers to be the MCs and to introduce awards and that type of thing. So I had the best of both worlds. And the civil rights part of it became very easy for me because I could empathize with the people that were our clients. And most of them were undocumented immigrants. A lot of them were discriminatory cases. people that were not allowed into school, um, teachers that had been fired, professors that were not given tenure, and on like that. So it really gave me like this whole, opened up a whole world that I had really not tapped into on a professional level, on a more awakened, woke level, right?
Mhm.
So um, again, it's like the path was very grateful for that. How Antonia helped me to get on that path.
Mhm. So eventually, as you navigated your way through your career, you came to a point where you wanted your retirement. You're somewhat retired, correct?
Yeah, I don't think I don't know. It's just,
Well, I know you moved from basically California. You made the choice to go
well,
down to to the border, and you chose Arizona over California. I was a little curious
well,
about that.
what had happened
Yeah, okay.
was that I left MALDEF after like I think 10 years or so. In between that, I would work. Before then, I worked for AARP on a national level too. But you don't make a lot of money doing nonprofit work.
Shocking.
Yeah, I got you can't. So I got a job with Frontier Communications and a telecommunications company that was doing a acquisition of Verizon in California. And so because of the different contacts that I had with a lot of the nonprofits, I was doing a lot of the community outreach so that the acquisition would be approved. And so when that was finished, I moved to La Quinta for about 7 years. And still, the border was calling me. The border was calling me because I've been going out pretty much every year to um, try to do. I would think I was in a discovery mode, but I knew that I wanted to make a documentary about the border because I had been doing documentaries all along. And so it partnered with Eva Longoria, the actress, producer, director, very dear friend. And so she was the one that got me into documentary filmmaking. And so I wanted to make a film about the border, specifically a woman by the name of Shura, who was described as a Mother Teresa of the desert. And so I wanted to create a documentary that lived up to what they called her. And so I finished that, and then what I ended up doing is creating a trilogy called The Truth About Migrants and the Border. And it starts with Shura, then this one man, we call him the Cross Man. His name is Alvaro Enciso, who has placed about 2,000 crosses all throughout the Sonoran Desert for migrants that have died, and their journey to reunite with family members, to find work, to pursue their American dream. And then created a full-length documentary, which is what I'm promoting right now.
Mhm.
And it's a 3-year project. And by the time I finish promoting it and everything, it'll be like 4 years. And it's been quite a journey.
So it was really sure that drew you down to Arizona as opposed to California border and the work that she was doing and being able to document that, correct?
Right. I think the other thing too is I wanted to reclaim a narrative. I was part of the Ford Foundation uh, and the National Association of Hispanic Journalists. I was one of their grantees, and they wanted me to. They commissioned my last book called El Oz, which is a Latino adaptation of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. So, yeah, I just got really involved in this whole idea of reclaiming the border narrative, not only for for the idea that the narrative has been hijacked, but also for myself because I grew up on the border, and we were always taught, don't go across the border; it's dangerous over there. The people are bad, that kind of thing. And there's no reason to learn Spanish. So by now, my Spanish is really, getting better. And the past 3 years, working with migrants directly, working with deportees and the shelters, I'm like pretty fluent. And so I think that's part of the reclaiming that I, wanted to pursue for myself as well. And at the same time, through documentary filmmaking and also through my writing is to really put a light on the goodness of the people, the the character of the people across the border.
Why is it you think that it's important to shine that light on the immigrant story for the immigrant?
Because what we've done in the media has thrived and made a lot of money through networks, through radio, through print, social media, across every medium you can think of to scare people. And yes, there's an element of people in every country that are bad, and including ours. And so, in many ways, during the environment that we're in right now, I feel a lot safer on the other side of the border. And it was widely reported, I was picked up by the Border Patrol as well, along with my producer and writer, Reina Grande. So we were picked up for being brown. There's a 2014 executive order by President Obama that allows for this type of racial profiling. And so it still exists today. And it existed before Trump took office, but now it's hyper accelerated. And it's taken on a whole different level than we ever could expect. So it's we're living in a time right now where it's for Latinos, for people that are brown. It is a scary time for many people.
Well, I know in the few interviews that I've had so far, it provides a platform for them to tell their story rather than someone else telling their story. And it seems really important to them to have their story heard in their voice.
Absolutely. Storytelling is something that we have as Latinos in our DNA. And, I don't want to get off track here, but if you look at a story, and most Latinos know this story of La Llorona, the crying woman who in the rivers, parents used to scare us at night to be good because the La Llorona would come pick us up. So that's one of the stories. But also our families, every Latino has been told different versions of that story, or El Cucuy, like the boogeyman, or the man with the chicken foot. Those are great stories, and they really help shape our character. The other thing that was really, that I think is very, very interesting is how my mom would make food taught by her grandmother, and the grandmother taught by the great grandmother, and so on. And there was a story about my mom would show me how to make potatoes for breakfast. And she told me, that the story of the potatoes and how they cry. And they tell you that they need to be turned over because they comienzan a chillar. They start to cry a little bit. And then that's when it's time to turn them over. And then when they start crying again, that's when it's time to take them out and put them on the plate. So there was a whole story my mom told me about every single food and the salsa and how you make it. And there was a story connected to everything. And as well as, why we should go to church, why we need it to be good. So I think storytelling is just so, so important. And I think right now reclaiming the narrative of who we are and the idea that we have been hijacked in our story. It's like who we are and our personal experiences don't matter because the narrative has already been established. And this has been cooking for over 100 years. And so that's what we're up against. And there's a lot of money invested in negative narratives about who we are.
Right. Well, and it's a big part of why we're doing the Camina is we just wanting to give individuals a platform to be able to tell their story. And I appreciate you coming today and sharing your experiences. A couple of last questions
Sure.
before you leave us today. As far as the immigrant goes, what do you think the biggest misunderstanding is?
I think that one of the biggest misunderstandings is, that we're here to take advantage of a system. We're here to take advantage of people. we don't bring any value to this country. And there's a lot of data, there's a lot of proof and evidence of what we bring in terms of contributions, in terms of a skill set, in terms of taxes across the board. I mean, if you look at the amount of money that um, undocumented immigrants put in the system, it's unbelievable. It's in the tens of billions of dollars. And so these are taxes that they will never be able to take advantage of, including Social Security. And so that's an income stream that benefits our country. And I know this has been told over and over, we just simply do not have people that want to, not Americans anyway, that want to go out into the fields and pick the fruits and vegetables and slaughter animals for the meats. And it's a very, very hard, tough life. Uh, our people, they do the dirtiest of the dirtiest jobs because they know that there's something that they're striving for. This group of folks save, that come into the United States. They buy appliances, they buy cars, they mortgage homes. This is all going into the income stream of the United States of America on the state level, on the county level, city level, and so on. And every time an undocumented person goes and buys something in the grocery store, they're paying taxes, and we all benefit from that. Is there crime? Yes, there's crime. But if you look at the percentage, on a whole, it is not nearly the crime that United States citizens are creating in this country, including mass shootings. So I think what we need to do is just, again, find some common ground that we can be heard. But this is an environment we're in that's just so volatile that one of the things we can't do is fight back the way we're being oppressed. What is happening right now is not sustainable. But immigrants bring a lot of value, and on top of that, they do a lot of volunteer work in their communities, in their churches, and they take care of one another. They're also providing children that are becoming highly educated, and so with that, there's a lot of contribution as well.
So, in closing, my last question then for you is, especially having grown up in Arizona, what's your vision for an immigrant that has come to Arizona? You're rolling your eyes like that's a big question.
That's a big question.
Yeah. What would your vision be? Because, like you said, I mean, we've established there's some issues going on right now that it's very challenging. But what would your vision be
For immigrants? My hope, my wish is that everyone is treated equally, that we're treated in a way, immigrants are treated in a way that allows them to feel safe, that allows their children to feel safe, to thrive, to get an education, to have a nice job, to have a home, everything every American strives for as well. The American dream that we have today, with the leadership that we have in place, they feel that the American dream is only for a certain group of people. And that is not what this country is about. That is not a patriotic way of being. Justice for all is really, really powerful. And I really feel that we need to have a space and a place in society where we are part of justice for all, that we're not excluded from a just world and a safe world, that we're protected as every other person is protected. But I say this as a person who is a United States citizen, but right now, all brown people, as we have seen time and time again, and along with people that are protesting this type of enforcement, none of us are really safe. But this is very much targeted at brown people. And I make no mistake, we have a leadership that does not want us here. And that is very scary. It's frightening. I've never seen anything like this in you know. But I also feel that we are in a phase. We're definitely in a phase, and I feel there will be a post era. We're in one era, and there will be a post era, and will have learned from this, and we will implement laws and put things into place where this can't happen again. So, but we are very much in our country are very vulnerable right now because the laws that we have in place have been completely tested and tossed out, including the Constitution. And we should be very, very worried about that. I feel that we are in this phase, and we're going to live through it, and we're going to prosper through it, and we will learn a lot. So that's my take on it.
What gives you hope at this time?
What gives me hope at this time are people that are helping people that are the most vulnerable, buying groceries for folks, helping people who make their rent payments, their mortgage payments, um, doing a lot of different things that we never dreamed that we would have to do to help people feel safe. Um, and I think that what gives me hope is that a lot of people have stepped up to the plate because they know what is happening right now is wrong. And that gives me a lot of hope. And those are stories that frankly are not being told as either, but they're there and we see them. And you have to do the work as a volunteer to know that those things are happening. And there's a huge, huge undercurrent of goodness happening when we see a lot more goodness that doesn't get a light shone upon it because again, there's powerful media forces. So, but that just totally gives me hope. We have to remain hopeful because otherwise we will succumb to the harshness of what is our now a reality now. So
Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you so much. It's been a pleasure, and I appreciate your words. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Stephanie, what did you think?
What a great job you did. I was particularly interested in listening to these stories that David Damian had about growing up as a farm worker born in America and yet identifying so strongly with the immigrant experience. He used we often. I'm a white person. My grandparents came from Eastern Europe. And I think that this really brought home to me the idea that the Latin experience is not easily separated into immigrants and non-immigrants. He was a farm worker the way immigrants are. He was picked up for being brown. And I think so much of this story made me really think about what it is to be Latin in America and in Arizona. And I think his ability to take that incentive that we've seen from some of our other interviewees about wanting to make it here and wanting to have the American dream and to be successful in the music industry and in the publicity. He worked for AARP, I think his bio says at one point, and not lose track of what's important to him. I think that was really moving to me.
I appreciate your words because I think so often when people think about immigrants, they assume it's someone who's come across the border. And yet at the same time, we see quite often there isn't a distinction between someone who is brown-skinned and an individual who is new to this country. And so all of those things that you're saying about his story in many ways is an immigrant story as far as having to face many of the similar challenges.
I think it's important to connect to that.
I appreciate that Damian has taken the time in his career to help reclaim that story of the immigrant, and through his documentaries and through the humanitarian work that he and others are doing at the border.
Yeah. When you start as a publicist, you're basically telling the stories of other people. And I think that his desire to make those stories authentic and his skill with that helped him reach out to people and have them tell their stories. I've seen the documentaries he made about the border, and they're really moving. And they also focus on some of the white people who were doing humanitarian aid there. And he's telling the stories from different points of view. And that brings us back to why we're here at www.podcastcamina.com to help people connect with those stories. Right, Susan?
Absolutely. And I think we will be putting out on our website links to his movies if individuals are interested in taking a look at those movies.
What a great idea. And that brings us to the part of the podcast we call Two Facts and an Act.
Well, for our first fact, when you think about the history of the immigrant, it really is the American story. So it's important to keep that in mind. In fact, what I found was that 1 in 6 American citizens are Hispanic.
Wow. So you're right. It really is our story, not just our story when we think about who the we is that we're talking about. So our second fact of the day, I did a little research to find out exactly what percentage of farm workers are American born, and that's only about 30%. Most farm workers come from Mexico and other places in Latin America. So our stories and our meals both depend a great deal on immigrants.
Well, that kind of leads to the act, which is if people are interested, we hope they will check out David's films, The Food Chain, which actually addresses the farm worker, as well as Samaritans.
Great. Thank you very much. You can find links to those on our website, www.podcastcamina.com, and we'll see you next month.
At our site, you can listen to the current and past episodes and keep the conversation going. Please request being added to the email list so we can send you a reminder as each new episode is aired.
A place where contradictions meet. Deserts of sand, mountains of snow. To make it our home, there's a long way to go.